Imagine opening, like, your banking app and finding $1 billion in there. But, instead of calling the bank to fix the mistake, you just keep the cash.
Because, that is exactly what happened to American taxpayer money during the pandemic.
Right. And the hammer is finally dropping on all this. It's May 2026 right now, and we are looking at some massive breaking news.
Yeah, the justice system is really finally catching up to the heist.
Seriously, they just sentenced Amy Bach to over 41 years in federal prison. She was the one who ran that massive Feeding Our Future scheme in Minnesota.
Over 41 years. And she owes, what, $243 million in restitution?
Yeah, $243 million. And, she is just the tip of the iceberg. The Department of Justice just launched this massive National Fraud Enforcement Division.
Right, with those 93 specialized prosecutors.
Exactly. 93 prosecutors deployed nationwide, basically with a single mission to hunt down hundreds of billions in stolen taxpayer dollars.
It really is like a nationwide crisis. The government pushed out just an unprecedented amount of money, and now, well, they're desperately trying to claw it back.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into the mechanics of the greatest financial heist in American history. We're looking at how the system broke down, who grabbed the cash, and how the government is changing the rules to fight back.
And we have a huge stack of sources for this one to help us unpack it.
We do. We've got Government Accountability Office reports, DOJ budget summaries, congressional transcripts, and reporting from Fox News, PBS, and Alpha News.
And just a quick note for you listening, these sources cover actions spanning multiple political eras.
Right. The original money was pushed out under the Trump administration, and the current crackdown involves politicians from all sides. We're just here to neutrally report the facts and, track where the money went.
So following that money requires us to really look at the mechanics of 2020. To understand the crackdown today, you have to understand the sheer panic of the early pandemic.
Yeah, the global economy was basically in free fall. Everyone was terrified.
Exactly. So the federal government decided they had to push out $4.5 trillion to save businesses and families. But they made a very calculated choice. Speed was more important than security.
They needed to get checks into your hands immediately.
Right, which meant taking down basically all the normal defensive barriers.
I understand prioritizing speed when people cannot pay their rent.
Yeah.
But looking at the PBS reporting, the actual execution is just, it blows my mind.
And it was incredibly flawed.
The government basically relied on something called self-certification. You just, checked a box on a digital form claiming you owned a struggling business.
And that was the whole security check, just checking a box.
Yeah. The government used software that approved up to 1.6 million applications in massive batches of 500 at a time. A human being never even looked at the paperwork.
They completely ignored massive red flags.
Totally. Fake phone numbers, internet addresses from outside the U.S. The software just blindly approved them. It's literally like leaving a bank vault door wide open, hanging a giant "take what you need" sign on it, and then acting shocked when the vault is empty the next morning.
And, the estimates of what vanished from that vault are just staggering. The GAO estimates that anywhere from $100 billion to $135 billion evaporated from unemployment programs alone.
Just from unemployment. That's insane.
Right. And the Secret Service says at least $100 billion was stolen overall. But other officials look at those numbers and say they are extremely conservative.
Wow, really?
Yeah, some experts cite estimates that $230 billion is stolen across all these government programs every single year.
Okay, so that leads me to a massive question about human nature, right? The system was undeniably broken. But did everyday people suddenly just lose their moral compass because the vault was open?
Well, forensic accountants actually have a framework for this. It's called the fraud triangle. It explains the psychological shift that turns a normal citizen into a criminal.
Okay, the fraud triangle. How does that work?
It has 3 sides: opportunity, pressure, and rationalization. So the system provided the opportunity by turning off the security checks.
Makes sense. The open vault.
Right. And the pandemic provided the pressure through intense economic fear. People were losing their jobs and watching their savings just drain away.
I get that part. Desperation makes people cross lines. But what bridges the gap between being stressed about money and actually stealing $1 million from the government?
That bridge is the third side: rationalization. The crisis basically provided the perfect mental excuse.
Like everyone else is doing it.
Exactly. People looked around, saw massive corporations getting bailouts, and saw the government printing endless money. They thought, everyone else is getting rich quick on these loans. If I don't take my share, I'm the only sucker playing by the rules.
So they rationalized it as just participating in a flawed game. That psychology explains a lot, especially when you look at who actually took the money.
Right, the demographics are really surprising.
Because when you hear about a multi-billion-dollar heist, you automatically picture, like, international cyber cartels or hackers. And they definitely stole billions. But the open vault also attracted our neighbors.
A massive wave of what the sources call opportunists.
Yeah. The GAO published a list of the types of people who got caught, and it is shocking. Pastors, doctors, police officers, professional athletes, social media influencers.
These are not hardened criminal masterminds. They were just people living normal lives until they saw that open digital vault.
And they didn't just steal a little bit for groceries. We're talking about highly coordinated schemes. Take that story Representative Gary Palmer told during a congressional hearing.
Oh, the double-dipping scheme. That highlights the ultimate failure of government databases.
Exactly. He brought up findings from the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee. They found 40,000 individuals who played two federal agencies against each other.
It's wild how simple it was, too.
It's so simple. They went to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, filled out a form saying, I am completely broke, zero income, I need low-income housing.
And then they opened a new tab on their computer.
Right. They went to the Small Business Administration and said, I run a highly profitable business with a huge payroll. Give me a PPP loan. They grabbed $860 million in forgivable loans just by telling two different stories to two systems.
And you might wonder how two massive agencies failed to notice the same Social Security numbers submitting contradictory statements.
You'd think a computer would catch that instantly.
Well, the answer is that government databases are intensely siloed. They run on entirely different, antiquated architectures. They literally do not communicate.
So the systems were just legally and technically blind to each other.
Precisely. Because they couldn't cross-reference the data, the checks just kept clearing.
It is infuriating to think about $860 million walking out the door because two databases couldn't talk. And it gets even darker with cases like that Feeding Our Future scheme we mentioned.
Where they claimed they were feeding starving children.
Right. Amy Bach and her network claimed they were feeding millions of kids during the darkest days of the pandemic. But instead of buying food, they funneled the cash to buy luxury real estate, fleets of sports cars, and overseas vacations.
Taking money designated for hungry children requires just a massive disconnect from reality.
I really struggle with the morality of this. I understand fudging a form because you're terrified of eviction. But how does an influencer justify chartering a private jet while people line up at food banks?
The psychology changes completely when you introduce screens and digital portals. Technology fundamentally dehumanized the crime.
Because it doesn't feel real.
Think about the physical act of robbery. If you ask a normal citizen to point a weapon at a bank teller and demand cash, almost no one could do it. It's violent, and you have to look your victim in the eyes.
But this was entirely digital. You're just clicking buttons.
Exactly. When you type fake employee numbers into an online form from your couch, you don't feel the moral weight of stealing from your neighbors or depriving kids of meals.
You just feel like you're beating a computer game.
The screen acts as a psychological shield. It removes the human victim entirely, which makes that rationalization step incredibly easy.
So the opportunists played the digital game in 2020, and they won the first round. The money vanished. But fast forward to 2026, and the government is finally changing the rules.
They realized they couldn't fight a digital crime wave with analog tools. They are bringing heavy artillery to the fight now.
The crackdown is huge. Back in April 2026, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche announced that new National Fraud Enforcement Division.
And they are moving much faster than the justice system usually operates.
Right. They've embedded specialized prosecutors in every local district. They have over 8,000 fraud matters underway right now. In just one single week recently, they prosecuted $500 million in fraud.
It's a massive push, and the political landscape is entirely focused on this, too.
Yeah, J.D. Vance is actually leading a White House task force targeting $250 billion in government waste and fraud.
They are casting a very wide net with that task force.
They really are. They're even investigating high-profile figures. The sources note they are looking into Representative Ilhan Omar for alleged immigration fraud.
Though, to be objective, the sources also clearly state that Representative Omar calls those allegations flat-out false.
Absolutely. She denies it completely. But the broader point the sources are making is that this task force is showing absolutely nobody is flying under the radar right now.
The statistics definitely reflect that. Over 2,532 defendants have been found guilty so far.
And judges are handing out real prison time. plus orders to pay back hundreds of millions. But, putting 93 new prosecutors on the street sounds great, but are we just playing an expensive game of whack-a-mole?
What do you mean?
Well, the money was stolen years ago. A lot of these fraudsters probably already spent it on those private jets and sports cars. How do they actually get the funds back?
That's the thing. Relying solely on criminal courts would be a losing battle. Criminal cases take years to prove intent, so the DOJ pivoted.
Okay, to what?
They are utilizing civil liability and weaponized data. They established national fraud detection centers and finally connected those blind government databases.
Oh, so the computers actually talk to each other now.
Exactly. They cross-reference your housing applications against your business loan applications. When the algorithm catches the mathematical lie, they use civil asset forfeiture.
So they act like a financial repo man. They don't need to put you in handcuffs. They just look at the math and tow your sports car out of the driveway.
That's a perfect way to put it. In civil court, the burden of proof is much lower. They can quietly seize your bank accounts and freeze your assets without ever needing a criminal conviction.
Wow. So the people who got away with the cash and think they're safe are actually just sitting ducks waiting for the algorithm to find them.
They are incredibly vulnerable, and the government deployed one more tool that makes it nearly impossible for fraudsters to sleep at night.
Ah, the False Claims Act. I read about this in the GAO reports. This is wild.
It's essentially a whistleblower bounty system.
Right. The government is offering bounties. Private citizens can file lawsuits on behalf of the government against anyone committing fraud.
And the financial incentive is just staggering. If a whistleblower turns someone in, they legally get to keep between 15 and 30% of the recovered funds.
30%. Think about your own neighborhood. If you watch someone suddenly buy a massive new house in 2021 while their business was allegedly failing, you can turn them in.
And if they stole $1 million, the government writes you a check for up to $300,000 just for pointing the finger.
The government is basically crowdsourcing the investigation. And to make it even worse for the fraudsters, Congress quietly changed the time limit.
Yeah, the statute of limitations.
Normally, they only have a few years to charge someone. But for pandemic fraud, Congress extended the clock to 10 years.
A 10-year clock. So if you submitted a fake application in 2020, you are looking over your shoulder until 2030.
Merely a full decade, where literally anyone, your business partner, an ex-spouse, or just a nosy neighbor, could turn you in for a massive payday.
The paranoia has to be immense.
Bringing this all back to you listening, the pandemic forced the government to make a brutal choice between speed and security.
And choosing speed to keep the economy afloat cost American taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars.
They ripped the vault door off its hinges, and everyday people walked in and cleaned it out. But the vault is locked down now.
The algorithms are running, the databases are connected, and they are using every tool to track down that cash.
It really leaves you with a wild thought to ponder. Congress extended the clock to 10 years, and they are offering massive 30% bounties to whistleblowers.
With hundreds of billions still floating around out there in luxury assets.
Right. So will the next great American gold rush simply be neighbors turning each other in for pandemic fraud?
It is definitely going to be a highly lucrative decade for whistleblowers.
And a very paranoid decade for anyone who clicked that box and lied. Think about that the next time you see a brand new sports car mysteriously parked in your neighbor's driveway. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us today.